What is up, Ravens Flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in everyone to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin here with my co-host James Haskell and a new guest and friend of the show, Tyler James, who covers Notre Dame football for Inside ND Sports. Thanks for joining us, Tyler.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, man. Excited to have Kyle. So Tyler, of course, covering Notre Dame is gonna be the expert on all things Kyle Hamilton up to this point in his career, since we've only had a very brief picture of him at the rookie minicamp. But Tyler, we start here with every new face to the Ravens, especially all the draft picks, and I got to know the type of person they're getting. So set aside him as a football player first for a minute, and tell me about what type of teammate and what type of guy they're getting with Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah, Kyle Hamilton certainly fits the bill of what you'd want out of a player. I mean, he's a hardworking kid, sets the standard for his teammates. Sort of embraced the role of a leader as his career went on, certainly knows what big expectations feel like as he became a 5-star prospect in high school, and sort of handled everything well. I mean, he was sort of the guinea pig for Notre Dame in terms of NIL opportunities, because he was the best player on Notre Dame's roster last year and had a lot of opportunities presented to him in terms of being like a pitch man for a number of different brands. And I think he handled all of that seamlessly with the help of his family. Really, I mean, if anyone wants to get to know him better, he had hosted a podcast called the Inside the Garage podcast with some of his teammates. And it has a pretty good look at what he's like, not just as a player, but what he's like off the field too. And I think a lot of Notre Dame fans got to know him better through that process as well. So it's really cool to see him sort of get to live out his dream and do everything that a lot of people expected of him. Because he's worked pretty hard for it.
That's awesome. One of the things that struck me about his personality is some Ravens fans might like this, some might not, but that's okay. We had a former quarterback here that we call Cool Joe. He was just always under control, like always, really chill. Wasn't up, wasn't down, just kind of even keel. And I feel like Kyle, they had a short clip of him watching a message from his dad, talking about him getting recently drafted. And he was just like, not that he's emotionless, but he's pretty even keel, right? Like he doesn't seem very easily phased. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think he definitely gets up and gets excited in the game, and he will show that excitement when he's on the field. But yeah, I think he's a pretty laid back kid. That's something that you hear from people that know him well off the field. He doesn't get really phased, doesn't get that upset. He sort of can handle things that are thrown at him and sort of adapt to the moment. And certainly, I think everything that he's sort of done on the football field and done in the classroom and off the field throughout his career sort of prepared him for moments like these in the NFL. So I don't think that you can really put too much on his play. I mean, he's a very smart kid too. And that's not just because he went to Notre Dame. Like, he's genuinely smart. He was, when he was a kid, he was certified as a Mensa genius or whatever. So he's like legitimately smart. And
so was I.
So we'll see how that translates to picking apart offenses.
Well, really quickly, I got to follow that up with something I've been really intrigued about with him as a prospect. Glenn and I talk about this, and this is something that really resonates with me in my evaluation of players. I'm no scout or, professional evaluator, but I like two-sport athletes, multi-sport athletes, things like that. And he seems to, obviously, it sounds like his first love was basketball, and, following his dad's footsteps, and early on, he thought that was going to be his path. He's built a lot like a basketball player, in my opinion. And people have talked about how his length is almost a bad thing. I've heard him described as tall and slow. But how does in my opinion, I think it's an advantage. How does his skills that he's developed as a basketball player, as a two-sport athlete, how do they, serve him as an advantage on the football field?
Yeah, so he's good at everything. That's what I did a story on him before the season, a little bit more in depth, and got to talk to his family, his dad and his mom and his brother about him. And he's good at everything, whether it's ping pong, golf, video games. He's just naturally better than everyone else around him at things. And so I think that obviously that helps you when it comes to trying to specifically be better as an athlete on the football field. So yeah, I mean, he was training to be a basketball player and football player at a young age. His dad pushed him pretty hard because his dad knew what it took to be an elite level athlete. And I think sort of those skills that he developed just as an athlete in general, because I think his dad probably thought he would be a basketball player at first, but then sort of realized, okay, football, this might be where it's at for him. But he was trying to get him to become a better athlete, whether it was on the basketball court or the football field. And I think those all sort of have come together for him. He certainly is a bit abnormal in his length for the safety position. You don't see that many safeties his size, but I think he carries it well, handles it well. To me, it doesn't impact his athleticism negatively. I know he wasn't a burner in terms of the 40 time, but I don't know that necessarily shows up on the field. I mean, where he needed to be on the field, he seemed to get there before other people wanted him to be there. So it's the 40 times a bit of a head scratcher just because it doesn't necessarily match what you see on film. But I do think he's a bit of a total package in terms of the athleticism standpoint.
Yeah. So no concerns there, because it's interesting when I watched his 40. First of all, it didn't look like he went the traditional route and hired like a track coach to work on his 40, because he was running like zigzag on this 40, which obviously a straight line is the fastest route from point A to B. So do you know anything about his preparation up for the combine? Did he go the route of hiring like a combine coach?
Yeah, he was working out, I believe, in either Las Vegas or Los Angeles. I can't remember exactly, but he was working out at one of those pre-combine places. And I think it might've been Exos, but I could be wrong there. They all sort of blend together to me. So he was doing some preparation for that. And I think he was certainly disappointed with his output. I think he thought he would do better and probably had done better in practice. I'm not really sure why it didn't necessarily come together for him at the NFL Combine or necessarily at the Pro Day either. I think he thought he would clock better times than he did. So, I mean, some people will want to read into that and say, well, if this was the task he was given and he didn't excel at it, what does that say about him? But I don't know. To me, I mean, that he's not going to be asked to do that ever again. And I'm sure he's probably pretty happy about that no one's going to be asking that he should be running the 40-yard dash. So I think that we maybe overanalyzed the guys leading into the draft sometimes. But I do think that and he'll tell you, like, I thought I'd do better. I think he sort of made fun of himself even, I think, at the NFL Combine. Like, yeah, I wish I would have run faster. But I think he sort of handled it with grace, and I think he knows that he's a better football player than he is a track athlete.
Well, and he probably knows now that it worked out in his favor. I mean, if you had to give any of these guys truth serum, even the top 5 picks, you're going to a tough situation, right? For the most part, like, those teams are top 5 picks for a reason. In fact, DK, of course, thinks that he ran a slower 40 on purpose. So that way he'd end up in a situation like Baltimore or something like that. It's all speculation, but I guess at the end of the day, you never do know, right? But the Ravens here in Baltimore, the fans have been spoiled for what? I mean, how long was Ed Reed here, Glenn? A decade or so? I think a little bit more. Yeah. And certainly we know good safety play when we see it. So talk to us about him on the field. Like, you mentioned that he's good at everything. What type? I mean, we asked what kind of person the Ravens are getting. What type of player? I mean, is he a box safety? Is he is he a ball hawk? Everybody said he's checked every box, but if you had to put a description on his game, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I think he probably is at his best in the box because he can cover ground so quickly. He diagnoses plays really, really fast. I think if you've seen highlight clips of him, you've certainly seen the play that he made against Purdue. There was like a 4th down conversion, and they tried to run to the outside, and he was like, "No, this isn't happening." He was down and tackled the guy at the line of scrimmage before the guy could get the yard that he needed. And obviously, people have probably also seen the ground that he covered in the secondary against Florida State in the season opener to make an interception where he was
ridiculous
all the way on the other side of the field and ran all the way to the sideline to make the pick. Now, I think he's better like I said, in the box. I think he is good in coverage. I think he probably has more work to do there, and I don't think he was as tested there. And Notre Dame would put him all over the place. That was part. Marcus Freeman and Clark Lee before him knew that Kyle Hamilton could do so many things. So they tried to utilize that as best they could to benefit the defense, which maybe we didn't always put Kyle in the best position, but they felt confident in his ability to execute and cover guys, whether it was in the slot, back deep as a center fielder, or stopping the run in the box. So I think he has the ability to do multiple different things. I do sort of see maybe his upside a little bit higher as a box safety, but I do think he has the speed and athleticism to cover. I think I'll be curious like how he matches up against like NFL slot receivers like that might be tough. I think he would be really good against tight ends because of his size. So I think those are all things that I think the Ravens are going to have to figure out how to best use him moving forward.
Yeah, it certainly looks like they're getting they want to be very multiple on the defensive side of the ball, and he could be the main chess piece in making that a possibility. Was he a high rated recruit when he came out of high school, Tyler?
Yeah, he was. Well, he wasn't initially. He was a 3-star recruit back when Notre Dame actually offered him, and then people started to realize how good he was. And so by the time he actually signed with Notre Dame, he became a 5-star recruit, and everyone wanted him at that point. But he was long committed to Notre Dame and knew that Notre Dame was where he wanted to go. So yeah, there was definitely high expectations for him. People sort of saw his ability as a playmaker in the secondary. He also played some wide receiver in high school as well. And there was a lot of people that were interested in maybe him playing a little bit of receiver at Notre Dame when Notre Dame was having some struggles at the receiver position. And he'd even joked with the offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, about just put me in there and throw it to me. But Notre Dame never let him do that. But I think, he was a highly sought recruit. And like I said earlier, he handled that really well. I think he sort of he didn't really care that he was a 5-star recruit, but he knew sort of what came with that, the expectations that came with that. And that wasn't really going to change how he was going to approach what he wanted to accomplish at Notre Dame. And the first game of his career in Notre Dame Stadium, he intercepted a pass for a touchdown. Like the very first play. So people, and the first practice we saw was actually the first practice of fall camp before the season. We saw that he picked off the quarterbacks, I think 3 different times in the very first practice. We're like, so Kyle Hamilton, huh? And Brian Kelly was trying to downplay it. He's like, I didn't even see it. He was like trying to ignore it, but it was impossible to ignore Kyle Hamilton from the very start of his Notre Dame career.
That's awesome. So one of the things I got to ask is focused on why you think he ended up going to the Ravens, and that, like, why was he available at 14? Is there anything you can think of in his game, in his evaluation, that would make him slide? Or was it more about the position and the value of safety? Like, how do you analyze that in your mind? Is there anything that somebody could poke a hole at other than the 40?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 40 played a big role. I think that the safety value is part of that conversation too. I'm not really sure. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I just think that sometimes these NFL teams sort of overthink it and think too much about it when they see, okay, this guy can make plays. What do we do? I mean, Notre Dame fans are familiar with this. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, most people thought he would be a first-round pick.
Yeah.
He fell big time, even farther than Kyle Hamilton did, and then he was one of the better rookies in the.
Yeah, don't remind us of that guy.
Yeah, we're not big fans of that guy.
Enough of that guy chasing around Lamar. Okay,
he ended Lamar Jackson's season.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So people thought Jeremiah was too small. Now maybe people thought Kyle Hamilton was sort of too big for his position, and they weren't really sure how he'd fit at the NFL with all that length and not necessarily showing that speed in the 40-yard dash. So I don't know. Like I would see some quotes. And then obviously they're anonymous quotes. I think Bruce Feldman from The Athletic had some that said, we thought we could beat him in the slot anytime we wanted to. He doesn't play well moving backwards. It's like, well, I don't remember teams doing that. So I don't know. I don't know if these coaches are just talking above their heads or what, or maybe they did better against Kyle Hamilton than I recalled or remembered. Or maybe they felt like they could have and just didn't execute. So I didn't see a lot of reason for him to drop as far as he did. But also I'm not in a position to draft players either, but
were you sitting there though? If you have, obviously I'm sure you follow the NFL as well. Were you sitting there at 14? You're like, there's no way that Baltimore passes on this kid. Like, I mean, did you think he would get picked here?
Yeah. I mean, that made sense. I mean, I obviously wasn't extremely familiar with Baltimore's needs necessarily. But yeah, I mean, once it got out of the top 10, it's like, well, someone's going to trade up and just swoop in and get Kyle Hamilton or something like that. Cause it's just like the talent is there, in my opinion. So yeah, to see someone like Baltimore at 14 say, okay, yeah, we're not letting them get past us. That wasn't too surprising to me. And it makes a lot of sense because I do think that there is that first round potential there for him.
And now I don't know how Notre Dame gets the play call on the field, but when he was at rookie mini camp, he wore the green dot microphone helmet. And there was a lot of speculation that maybe he could be the guy during the regular season. But of course, this was just rookie mini camp. But so how did they relay the play? Was he involved in any way?
I don't think so. I think it's
signals,
mostly hand signals, and I think everyone's just looking at the sideline. I think the linebackers certainly play a big role in that, but I think everyone's communicating. That's something they really stressed, was wanting to communicate and being on the same page as much as possible. I think he learned a lot at Notre Dame in the various defenses that he played in. Clark Lee, who was the defensive coordinator, who went on to be the head coach at Vanderbilt for Kyle's first 2 seasons at Notre Dame, he was he was a thinker. Like, he wanted everyone to know what to do. He had some complicated schemes that he would put in there, and he wanted guys to be masters of the defense. Whereas when Marcus Freeman came in, he was like, hey, I just want you guys playing fast, playing physical. If you make mistakes, we'll live with it. But if you're just committed to what you want to do, that's sort of that's our motto. That's what we want to do. So he's played in a little bit of different looks defensively and different philosophies, and I think he's handled a lot of that. So I imagine he knows a lot of the defenses that will be thrown at him in the NFL. So I think that'll be pretty valuable. And like I mentioned, obviously he's a very smart guy, so I think that applies to the football as well.
Now, where do you see this kid as far as, a worst case scenario and a best case scenario, whether that be a player comp or whether that be, do you see him as a multi-time all pro, Pro Bowl type guy? I don't know, Hall of Fame type guy. Like, what's your ceiling and floor for this guy?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when he goes to Baltimore, everyone's like, "Well, can he be the next Ed Reed?" It's like, well, that's a pretty
that's
high
unfair.
Yeah,
that's
just
the best safety of all time. But
yeah.
I mean, I think he can be one of the best safeties in the NFL. I mean, we've seen what Harrison Smith. That's a Notre Dame product that has had a lot of success in the NFL, and I think Kyle Hamilton can have a pretty similar career that Harrison Smith has had. So I think that's sort of the ceiling. I think he can be one of the best safeties in the NFL. Go on to, I mean, Hall of Fame seems kind of a crazy thing to just sort of throw around, but yeah, I mean, I don't see why that wouldn't be within reach. And to me, I mean, and to go to the worst case scenario, I mean, to me, worst case scenario, he just becomes a linebacker and he's going to be a really good linebacker. I mean, that's why that's sort of the thing. It's like, okay, if you really don't like him at safety, why can't he be a great linebacker? Maybe they're not worried, or maybe they're worried he can't put on enough weight and wouldn't be able to handle the physicality of it. But I mean, if for some reason he doesn't work out at safety, I think he would be a great linebacker too if that was the task given to him. So
some folks here might not be too mad at that.
So I mean,
helping coverage.
If that is your ceiling, I think you have to be pretty comfortable with what pick you made there at 14 overall.
No
Absolutely.
doubt. Yeah, happy to have Kyle Hamilton. Can't wait to see what kind of player he turns into at this level. But thanks so much for joining us, Tyler. I appreciate your time. I know it's certainly valuable. Make sure you guys check out Inside ND Sports for all the stuff Tyler's working on. But let them know also where they can find you on social media, Tyler.
Yeah, my Twitter handle is at TJamesND, ND like Notre Dame. And our website, InsideNDSports.com or NotreDame.rivals.com. You can find all of our stuff there.
Nice. Thanks so much, Tyler. Have a good night.
Have a good one, man.